Testing. Secure your Elixir apps with Paraxial.io. From code analysis and bot defense to dependency checks, they've got you covered. Elixir first design with GitHub integration. Elevate your security at Paraxial.io. Hey, what's up? I'm Jacob Blitzo, your Elixir Mentor, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Elixir Mentor Podcast. This is where we discuss everything related to Elixir, from interviews with enthusiasts, pioneers in the community, to innovative projects and libraries shaping Elixir's future. Today, I'm excited to welcome back Peter Ullrich and Alex Koutmos to discuss their new venture, and I'm sure a lot of other cool things, but they just built EZSuite, and it looks like it's going to be a collection of some really cool tools for us developers to use. So guys, welcome back and thank you so much for joining me. And for everyone that doesn't know who you are, could you just maybe give brief introductions of yourselves?
Thanks, Jacob. I don't know who Alex Koutmos is. Alex, who are you?
Who has entered the chat? I don't know. You want the TLDR or the long one? I don't know.
Whatever you want.
So where were you born?
Where was I born? I was born in Astoria, New York, a long time ago. But
and then where did you go to kindergarten?
And then 25 years later, I found this language called Elixir after I was born in Astoria, New York.
You're brushing over the details here.
Yeah. There's some good stories from childhood. We'll say that for a different podcast.
Yeah. Are you very active in the Elixir community, Alex? I haven't really.
I just
seen
started
your name
using
ever.
it. Yeah, I've been doing a lot of Next.js recently, and I discovered this thing called Elixir, and
right.
It's kind of blown my mind, especially this live view thing.
Right. That's why.
So yeah, Alex is really new, and he's been really enjoying my introductory basic playlist on YouTube.
Yeah.
But,
well, that's why I took him under my wing. I thought he needs some help, some guidance of an experienced developer, and Alex and I, that's why we started this little company, just to teach Alex how to write Elixir.
It's much appreciated. It is much appreciated.
You're welcome. It's tough, but I'm here for it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. No, honestly, Alex, you are probably the person with the most Elixir libraries out there.
No, I think there's definitely some more. Like, I don't know. I have a medium amount, and they're very niche, so they're not like really highly used. So at least I don't think they're highly used.
Which one is your most prominent one?
I think Promix is probably the most popular. So that's the Prometheus metrics and Grafana dashboards one. And I think that one gets like 7,000 downloads a day.
A day?
That's pretty popular, dude.
5,800. I lied. We're in
That's
the holiday
amazing.
season.
Nah,
so
it's less good. It's less,
never
better.
mind. It's not impressive.
Yeah, if you could just drop off the chat, that'd be great.
Yeah, wait. I wish I had a little more control. We can just turn off Alex.
A lot of the libraries that I wrote they're just born from problems that I had building SaaS apps, and I kept running into the same issues, and I just wanted to fix them and solve them and never have to worry about them again. So Promix is for metrics and monitoring. There's Unplug for like dynamically unplugging plugs from endpoints. There's Doctor for making sure there's like documentation coverage. DenoX running Deno stuff, and a whole bunch more. I can't remember them all.
Awesome. And author.
Yes, and book author.
Successful SaaS company.
Lots
I've
had a few failures in there too. So there's been a few failed SaaS attempts. But
well, you only brag about the good ones.
Yeah, right. It's like 5-year overnight success.
Awesome. And Peter, how about a quick introduction of yourself?
Yeah, right. Well, I'm Alex's employee. That's why I'm here. My boss told me to be here. Now we both work on Eagle, which is Alex's startup. But yeah, otherwise, I don't know. I'm not a prolific library author. I rather create problems with my libraries, I have a feeling, so instead of solving them. No, otherwise, I mean, I also
You
wrote
are
a
a
book.
prolific blogger, though.
Oh, yeah. I think my blog is probably my the one thing that I'm actually contributing with to the Elixir community. The rest is kind of like net negative, maybe. But just stupid questions, you know.
If your stuff is negative, mine definitely is.
No. Anyway, no, I think we're all here on the good side. We're all net positives to the community here. But yeah, my blog at peterullrich.com, I started that like a couple of years, 3-4 years ago or so, and I've been more active in the last 2 years. And yeah, I don't know, I love writing blog posts because it gives me a reason to play around with stuff. You know, usually it's like, why should I set aside 4 hours on a Sunday to look into this new library that came out and how to do X with it? You know, I will never use it in my job. I will never use it in my side project. Well, never, but you know, highly unlikely. But if you write a blog post about it, anything goes. You can, you know, it's like the company credit card. Just spend it, you know, spend on anything. Doesn't matter. But yeah, that's why usually I just, you know, read something or hear something, or I learn about a new library, and I'm like, oh, how do I do X with it? So I try to do X with it, and then I just write about it. And the writing process, I, you know, keep really to a minimum, just kind of also to you as a reader, I kind of just give you the instructions, right? I don't want to tell you how my grandma made this amazing recipe back when I was 13 that I still, you know, have like that's stuck in the back of my mind when I tell you about active schemas or something. You know, it's like nobody wants to listen to that, to read that. So anyway, I try to keep the blog post pretty minimal, and yeah, that's my blog.
Yeah.
And
Peter is a big fan of fluff added to blog posts, and he likes, 30, 40-minute reads.
Yes. The longer the better.
Yes.
I love wasting time.
I actually love your style because I think we talked about it last time you were on about the power of like micro blogging, right? Where it's just a very niche topic that you hit on. And then, when people are randomly looking for that one issue, they find your blog post on it.
Yes, but yeah, it's just, I think there's so many learnings that we do along the way, like every day almost. You have a problem, and then you figure it out, and the next person will most likely also have that problem. And in the Elixir community, we like to document stuff. So ideally, obviously, you would improve the library's documentation or something. But otherwise, if you don't feel, like making a pull request and all that kind of stuff, you can also just write about it. Like, I love these little blog posts that kind of just explain how to set certain configurations of libraries, and usually configs that I never heard about, but that I might, need in my project as well. Like Floki, I gave you that example last time. Like in Floki, there is an option, like a configuration option, to not encode the HTML in your test. So, when you have a name like O'Brien, like O-Brian, in your test, it would be like O&20 something. And yeah, if you like try to match that against what you have in the database, which is UTF-8 encoded, like you will have a match error. And there is a configuration that is somewhere in Floki, but it's not really well documented. Maybe, to be honest, I should create a pull request and finally document it. But hey, there is a blog post about it. It's like 2 paragraphs. It tells you, hey, there's this option in Floki. Just enable this, and all your HTML will not be encoded. Like it will be raw, kind of, And then all your tests magically go green. You won't have flaky tests anymore. Stuff like that. And yeah, these are the blog posts I cherish the most.
Yeah, you won't add escape characters to your tests just to make them pass, right?
No. I was actually gonna say I didn't even know about that. It's a good thing you mentioned that, because every time that's failed in CI, I'm like, all right, what's the random seed? I get the random seed. I go back to local. I'm like, okay, this is why the test failed.
Yeah. Well, I actually never knew about that either, and I would just fudge my seed data, right? And then when Peter was on last time, he talked about that, and I was like, mind blown. So that was helpful. All right. Well, why don't we, you guys want to talk about, sorry, dog. Do you guys want to talk about EZSuite and like what your goals are with it, and what is it?
Yes. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, you want to take it away, or I'm going to take it away, Peter?
No, you take it away. You're much better at selling.
Thank you. Yeah, so EZSuite was kind of born from me and Peter having both started bootstrapped products and services. It was kind of born from problems that we kept encountering, and we couldn't find really good solutions or ones that integrated nicely with Elixir. So EZSuite is going to become an umbrella kind of business / project, and we're going to put a whole bunch of cool libraries under there. And we're going to go the once.com kind of avenue, where you pay once and that's it. You use it forever. And we're going to maintain it for a long time because both of us use it in both of our SaaS products and services. So it's not as if you buy it. We run a grift for like 2 months and then we ignore this library forever. These are things that we use day in and day out, and we're constantly developing. But the first of the products that's going to go under EZSuite, and it's already out, is Phoenix to ban, which is, I think, one of the easiest firewalls I've ever installed in an app. And then you get to avoid the whole configuring your Linux server if you have access to your Linux server, because places like Fly or like AWS Lambdas and stuff like that, you don't necessarily have access to the raw host. So even if you wanted to set up like some sort of firewall, you have to either buy into the cloud platforms tooling that they charge you extra for, or you don't even have access to it and you have to do something like Cloudflare, and then you have redirects, and it's kind of a poor user experience. So putting it at the application level, I think, has been pretty cool. So.
Yeah, that's nice. I also like the bringing back buying software licenses model, because I think everyone is just tired of monthly subscriptions with a lot of stuff they use.
Yeah, and I think some things warrant like the monthly subscription, right? Like
some things for sure, I agree.
Yeah, but I think like you said, it's been beaten to death, where it's like every single like micro product is a SaaS now, and it's like, I don't think so.
Yeah,
like I know there's not a lot of code behind this. I don't think it deserves to be a SaaS. Maybe just a one-time fee.
Yeah, if there's not maintenance and monthly cost behind running your product, it shouldn't be a SaaS product.
Yeah. It's I do think it's been overused as a business model. So we're bringing it back. One-time fees. You get it forever. Like I said, we both use it in our stuff, so we're continuously updating it and maintaining it. So.
I love that.
There's another incentive there to get it to develop.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's the best thing, right? When you're using your own tools, it motivates you, and you're testing it every day on your own product line, which is always beneficial. Now, for Phoenix to ban, I'm guessing it's running at plug level in your router, right?
Yeah, it does, but like just behind your static files. So, because we don't know exactly what kind of files you have in the static folder. So just behind the plug static, we add Phoenix to ban. So if a request comes in, we asynchronously analyze it. So we don't even throttle, or we don't slow down the actual request. We kind of just, send a message to a gen server, and in the background, we analyze the request. And when we find, for example, that the request is to a route that you don't have, but that is kind of malicious looking, like you have a lot of these bots that just try to find the WP admin PHP page to log into your WordPress page, right? And
dude, that's all my server is hit with is the WordPress vulnerability routes. Like, come on, guys.
It's just every night, actually, Alex and I, we both had the issue. Every night at 4 a.m., these bots would come in. They just try to, fetch the login websites. And, well, we get the 404 errors in Sentry because it's a route that does not exist, right? So it's kind of annoying. And then you also don't want to silence that particular error because you might have a 404, like a legit error. So it's just noise, really. Mm-hmm. And that was actually Alex's initial problem. And then he came to me and said, can't we build something for this? So that was Phoenix to ban's first feature, where we look at these routes that the bots most likely try to access that you don't have in your application. And then after 3 attempts, we just block them, for a certain period of time on the IP level. So, it's better than nothing. I know it's not super great. They can just change the IPs, but, better than nothing. Yeah, that's how it kind of started. But that was just like the MVP, to just get it out there, to see whether people are actually interested in buying it. And we saw that people like to buy it. So we had a quick follow-up, which is actually now we pull in the Abuse IPDB database. So there's an official website called Abuse IP database. And that's where, people, bigger companies, they all report malicious IPs to that website. So they say, hey, like there's a phishing attack coming in from this particular IP. So they report it to that website, and then everybody can kind of synchronize with the IP list they have. And this IP, if I get any request from them, most likely, or actually with almost 100% confidence, that this is a malicious request. So that's what we now do with Phoenix to Ban. Like when you add it to your application, you start your application, we actually host like the Abuse IPDB block list, and we kind of send it to you in an optimized format. Once an hour, it gets updated. And if your application then sees a request from any of these IPs that are 100% malicious, with 100% confidence, we block them for you, right? And that's another layer that is on top of the original, kind of checking the routes, the access routes, and blocking based on that. So these are the two main factors here, and you can always manually block IPs as well if you have your own checks. And there's one more feature in the making, which probably will come in the next year. And that is actually the feature that gave the library the name. Because the original library failed to ban, that people most likely know from the Linux space, like whenever you host your own web server, you can just add fail to ban to it. And it runs on your server itself. So it's not like Elixir specific. Actually, I think it's written mostly in Python. And what they do is they scrape your logs, they look at your logs, and when they see that a user has multiple, like a 403 or 401, so like unauthorized, after 3 or 5 attempts, they block that IP, because those might be people that try to like log into your application, like password stuffing that just they have a username and a password like from a leak, and they try to just put it into your application and see whether that works here as well. Well, most likely they will get 403s or 401s quite often, and after 5 attempts, fail to ban blocks them on the IP level for a certain amount of time. Now, if you install fail to ban, you need to have access to the server that you run on, and you need to have access to the web server, like Nginx, so that actually routes your requests and that kind of stuff. You don't have that always. As Alex already mentioned earlier, like on AWS or Fly, you don't really have access to the server. It's more ephemeral, like temporary. So we moved that into the Phoenix application. And that means, in the future, when somebody tries to log in to your application, to your Phoenix application, and they kind of just, have like 4.3, 4.3, 4.3, boom, they get blocked, and they can't access your application anymore as well.
Are the block temp count, is that a configurable thing, or is it just
Yes.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, right, you can adjust what your thresholds are and when like Phoenix to ban kicks in. And we also have a nice Phoenix Live dashboard, so you can keep track of all these attempts coming in, and you could even, like, let's say something's blocked by accident, you can go in and like immediately unblock it.
Very cool. Like can you whitelist and add like routes you might not want blocked and things like that as well?
Yeah, both of those are configurable.
Cool.
You can ignore routes. It's always a good idea with a Stripe webhook, because a Stripe webhook, you might block Stripe. I've done that almost in every application I've built by accident.
So that's a fun one to troubleshoot. Why isn't my webhook hidden?
Exactly. And then people, they said, "Oh, I just bought it. I didn't get an email. How can I sign in?" And then you have to like send the event again and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, we made sure that you can easily ignore routes even by regex. So all the routes under webhook / something, just ignore all of those.
That's a smart move. I like that.
Stuff like that. And also we're working on the usability of it a little bit more. So what Alex already mentioned, the live dashboard we have, the plugin for live dashboard. We also want to show a bit more historic data, because sometimes, somebody might get blocked, but then they get unblocked later on. and you just want to check like why were they blocked or who was blocked, that kind of stuff. Yeah, and then there are a lot of these features on our roadmap. We don't really know how to prioritize them right now, so we just kind of do what seems most important for us. But one thing that I also like is the persistence, and that is something you don't have in fail to ban, for example. So when you restart your server, and with Fly you do that quite a lot. When you scale up, you scale down, you will lose your block list because it's in the memory. You restart the server, it's gone. And Alex and I, we already discussed a couple of ideas here, but ideally, it would be to have a persistent block list somewhere in the database or somewhere else, so that if you actually restart the server, we just fetch it from the database and you have the same block list again.
You could you almost use just like SQLite or something like that, something really basic?
Well, I mean, that also goes away when the server restarts, right?
Well, couldn't you save it though in a static directory? Oh,
well, you'd have to mount like a separate volume or something like that.
Yeah, I got you.
I think most people use Postgres, like for production apps. So we'd probably lean on Postgres as well, because then that also gives us the ability to do like we could either do pub sub through Postgres, or we could do like clustered Erlang.
Would you just add tables to the existing Postgres database, or would you spin up
okay, kind of like Open does, right? Where they Open provides a bunch of macros. It's like, hey, just run this migration once and you're good.
Yeah.
So I imagine we'd probably do something like that. But
the persistence would be nice. That seems kind of important. Otherwise, you're losing your block list every time, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, then it also enables us to, like, let's say you have a cluster of apps running behind a load balancer. Like if one triggers the block list, it could put it up to Postgres. Maybe all the instances get the pub sub notification, and boom, all of a sudden everything behind the load balancer.
Yeah, cool.
You have a synchronized block list, because I have seen that at companies where every instance is its own very unique instance, and there's no necessarily any talking or synchronization between them. So maybe you trigger the rate limit on one box, but once you get round robin to the next one, it doesn't matter anymore.
Now, when you said that you're like asynchronously checking IPs as they come in, right? Because obviously you don't want to block, you don't want to throttle your performance. How are you doing it? Like once an IP is blocked, though, are you still letting them through before you catch it, or how does that work?
So it's just the analysis that happens asynchronously.
Okay.
Yeah. So what happens is, so you have this plug that you put into your endpoint, like Peter mentioned, after static, and then what happens is that request comes in. We immediately chuck it off to like a work queue, and the request continues, right? So the first time like a malicious request comes in, it's not gonna block it. It'll allow it to go through. But once enough malicious requests go through and the asynchronous pool of workers does its job, and we actually use partition supervisor for that. Once that does its analysis, it'll, let's say, determines that an IP is malicious. It'll put it into an ETS table, and then that's the only overhead that gets added to that plug. So as soon as that plug is invoked, it checks ETS. Does that IP address exist in ETS? If it doesn't, continue with the request and chuck it off to the async work queue.
Awesome.
That's at one ETS call is your overhead. That's
That's awesome.
I know it's a lot.
That's awesome.
And that also is constant time, so it won't slow down your request significantly.
And then I'm guessing the keys are the actual IP, so it's probably a really fast lookup too.
Yeah.
Cool. That's nice. I like that.
Yeah. And then in ETS, we also store, so along with that IP key, we also store some metadata. So let's say it's the WordPress endpoint that they're hitting, right? You'll know exactly what rule was triggered when that person was banned. And like Peter was mentioning earlier, we do plan on adding some additional stuff into ETS. So exactly what route were they hitting? Because sometimes, like the Stripe webhooks, maybe you need to know exactly what was hit so you can determine, is this malicious or not, as opposed to just what rule triggered the block. It's on the roadmap.
I like that. No, that's really cool. Do you like is this plug just self-contained in whatever project it's in, or do you have any logging that you're tracking outside of the project?
Oh no, we don't track anything.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, it's just the plug.
Nice. Yeah, the only thing we don't even track, but we offer the block list, the public block list from Abuse IPDB. We host that on EZSuite.
Okay.
And if you start your application, right when you start the application, it will try to download that block list, and then every hour it will update it. But that's literally like a rec get, an HTTP get, and that's it. And yeah, I mean, if you want, you can always disable that, or you can block EZSuite, and then there's no communication whatsoever.
With that list, once it's local, I'm guessing it's like a gen server process that is hitting it every hour.
Yeah.
And then are you putting that in a nats table, or is it just staying in that process?
It's staying in the process. However, like the original list is like 5.5 megabytes. Okay. And we actually use, like Alex, he told me very interesting ways to reduce the memory overhead, like on the memory foot size. What do you call it? The
footprint.
The footprint, yes, the memory footprint. Because the thing is, there's something called a probabilistic data structure, and I don't know, that's the biggest thing I learned last year, and Alex told me about it. So there are something called probabilistic data structures, and if you imagine, let's say, hey, we have this 5 megabyte list of IPs that I download from Abuse IPDB, and we could store that in a map set, for example. Map set, very simple. Still, it would actually require a lot of memory to store all these like 80, 90,000 IPs that I have there. And I would also need to serialize it, send it over to your server, and you would need to store it in your memory. Now, what we do, and we use 2 different probabilistic data structures. For this particular one, we use a cuckoo filter. And it's kind of like a Bloom filter. Maybe you heard about Bloom filter, but this one is a bit, more optimized for memory. And basically, it converts all these IPs into something that is not 100% accurate, but that is very small to look up. And how it actually works under the hood, you got to ask Alex, if he still remembers from his college years.
But Alex, I hope you remember, because I'm going to ask.
Oh, this is a live interview test, right?
You have like 2 minutes to look it up on Wikipedia. Yeah. No, but so what we do there is, like, we convert it into a cuckoo filter, and that actually becomes only 350 kilobytes of data.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Yeah. So that is a huge decrease of the footprint, the memory footprint. And that is the value, the data we send over to your server as well. So once a year, you fetch 350 kilobytes of data. You will barely notice it. Yeah. Even in the memory, it's still 350 kilobytes. And the thing with probabilistic data structures is they're not deterministic. They can't tell you with 100% certainty, yes, this IP exists in this list or not. So they're probabilistic. They say most probably they are not, like they don't exist in this list. However, the cuckoo filter is built in such a way that you can never say with 100% certainty that something is inside the list, so that you can never accurately say. However, you can say whether it does not exist in the list, and that is 100% accurate. So we just basically had to turn our logic around and say, the request is valid if the IP is not in our block list, basically.
Nice.
So that is something you have to keep in mind when you work with these data structures. But other than that, actually, they're quite fun and useful.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And there's a whole category of them too. So so cuckoo filter is the one that we use for like the block DB list. But then we also use the hyperlog log for all the metrics that show up in Phoenix Live dashboard. And that's another probabilistic data structure where, like, once again, you put data into it and you can't necessarily get that same data out, but it's optimized and tuned for a specific purpose. So like Peter said, for cuckoo filters, you can throw a bunch of IP addresses into it, but then you can't return, you can't do enum2 list and get that list back of IPs that were in there. But
it's like a magic black box.
It's a magic box of data that you can ask it questions, and depending on how you ask the question, it might be partially accurate or 100% accurate.
Dimitri goes, ask ChatGPT right now. You have 2 minutes left. But no pressure, but can you like high level explain like the cuckoo filter?
Yeah. So it works like under the hood. It has some sort of hashing algorithm. I'm not sure what like this implementation of cuckoo filter has, but essentially you toss a bunch of data into it. It hashes all of it, and it just starts flicking bits, in its storage mechanism. And then that way, when a request comes in, you perform the same hash, and you see if the same bits kind of overlap and match.
Okay.
And then if you have a positive match there, then you know that
it exists.
That thing exists in the set or doesn't exist.
Oh wow, that's cool. Okay.
Yeah. So it all works on hashing under the hood, which is why like hashes are one-way functions, right? Like if you hash something, you can't get it. You can't get it back out the other way. So yeah, under the hood, that's how Bloom filters and cuckoo filters work.
That's really cool. Yeah. But the concept is cool. Like I think a lot of people will grasp it a little better with that.
Yeah, don't ask me to go any deeper than that. I can't. So.
All right, let's. This is an interview. Can you whiteboard it and go into very technical detail?
Yeah.
Just pull it up and draw on the screen.
Oh God, I'm getting PTSD.
You work for Amazon, didn't you, Alex? Didn't you have to do whiteboarding there?
No, actually it was funny. When I got the job at Amazon, I actually went through like their new style of interviewing where they had like 100 candidates in a room, and they had like all of us at a table working together. It was working together was kind of like air quotes, where we all had like one part of a project to work on, and there was like a proctor at the table, so we can like ask each other general questions. But as soon as like it's like, oh, can you help me code? It's like, no, the proctor will say you can't do that. So they're trying to simulate like a team environment, but not.
Dude, whiteboarding and live coding are the worst part of any interview, and I don't think anyone should do them.
Even I hate them. I hate them. I much prefer like email me a project. I'd rather spend like 8 hours programming something with my music on. Like I'm in my environment. No one's over my shoulder.
Yeah. And then you walk through your project and explain it. And like, if you can explain your code to someone, it's pretty evident you wrote it, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So that's my favorite format.
Me too. I agree. I think the project is the way to go, especially if you actually want to see someone like how they organize code and like think through you can do slightly difficult problems when it's a take home versus like now explain how this sorting algorithm works, you know, like some leak code thing.
Well, I just use enum sort. Isn't that can't explain it though, but it works.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree with that actually. I think the most stressful interview I ever had was also the only one where I had to do like a screen shared coding session, you know, where I had to code something in Elixir, and it was like a data processing queue, and I only had 20 minutes for it, and you know, I was screen sharing, so everybody saw exactly what I was doing. And then, you know, you just have to start looking up Elixir, like the syntax, you know, how to do a stream again. That kind of stuff. You know, how can you parallelize the stream over all your CPUs again? It's like, you know, it exists, but you don't exactly know how to use it. You know,
and then when that kind of pressure's on, you forget everything too.
Yeah.
Your mind just goes blank, and you're like, shoot, I don't even know how to code.
It's like the name thing in the beginning. Somebody tells you a name, and it's like
exactly.
Maybe you should just start calling them by the wrong names, just, you know, show that you're under stress or that you're focused. You know?
I always have to make sure I look at my like calendar invite before I jump on calls with people, just so I remember the name. It's pretty bad.
Yeah. I'm very bad with names. I think I'm really good with faces, but like connecting faces to names, it's impossible for me.
Yeah, I agree. I'm the same way. It's hard.
Yeah.
I have to do that thing where like you have to repeat the name within like 30 seconds of hearing the name.
Right.
But if I don't do that, it's gone forever.
Yeah, me too.
Well, I mean, like, so Phoenix to Band sounds really cool. Can you guys talk about any other tools that you're going to be building that aren't announced yet, or is it top secret still?
No, I think I speak for both of us. Like we don't have a particular tool. Well, there are a couple of ideas we have, but none of them is at the state where we say, well, that's gonna be our next project. Because Phoenix the band is still it's still in development. It already has 2 out of the 3 big features we want to provide. We add all these UX helpers, so to say, also because people come to us and ask us, hey, can you add this configuration? Can you add this particular information? And that's basically our focus right now. So that's going to be probably the focus for the next couple of months as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're ironing out the product before new products hit.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. I don't want people to think that we just did this quickly, cobbled it together, and now we're off to another gold mine.
Yeah, well.
What are any rough ideas of things that you want to build?
I could dive into one of them, but I think it's pretty interesting. So I have a library called MJML EEX, and that allows you to use EEX templates with MJML, which is a compiler that takes MJML syntax, which is essentially HTML, and converts it into email compliant HTML. So if you've ever written responsive emails, you've probably done all the hacks where it's if this, use this many table columns. If that, use this many table columns. Because there's no flex or grid in emails. If you thought cross-browser compatibility was bad, wait till you see cross-email compatibility. So MJML is a tool where you write it in MJML, compiles it to all this nasty HTML that does all the responsive design and layouts for you. And we, again, having written 2 SaaS products that are successful between the 2 of us, writing good emails is important. And
writing good emails is one of the hardest things ever, I think.
Yeah. Especially getting it to look nice, right?
Right,
You want it to be visually appealing, because it shows a level of professionalism and it hits differently having a plain text email with a link in it versus a beautiful email with a hero image and a nice button that says click here to activate your it hits different, right?
I just dream about that pretty email, and then I send the ugly text email.
Well, do we have a product for you?
I'll be lining up for that one for sure.
Yeah. So the next one we're thinking about doing MJML EX Pro, which is essentially a whole bunch of common emails that you would send out, but we do all the styling for you, and it's you just get this nice package of templates. And you could plug in your links as opposed to our dummy links, and you're off to the races.
That's awesome. I think that's a great product right there.
Yeah. Unfortunately, MJML EEX needs to be updated now. So the library that I have, because I think when I wrote it, Heeks wasn't around. But I really like what Heeks has done, because back in the day, all we had was leaks, and then you actually had to make sure that you were closing all your divs and your tags properly. So I would like to take the work that was done in the Heeks engine and pull it into MJML EEX. But then I'd have to rename the library MJML Heeks as opposed to Eeks. So there's some preliminary work that needs to be done there. But
yeah, nice. I like it. That's cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I think that's the next one. I don't want to speak for Peter, but I think that's the next one after Phoenix the band.
Yeah, it could be. I mean,
he doesn't sound sold.
No. It's more I think with Phoenix the band, it was also a test for us, how pro libraries are seen in the community. First of all, we also didn't want to seem we have this great, amazing library that everybody would profit from, but we're not going to give it you to free. We can ask money for it. We tried that. I mean, also Alex, he has 19, 20 libraries out there that people use, and all of them are free. So we decided for this one, because we are both very busy people, that if we spend our free time on something like this, there needs to be at least a tiny monetary value attached to it. And right now we ask $99, but that is lifetime. You have the code. You can even upload it to your private GitHub if you want to, take a copy of it. It's kind of like a lifetime deal. So we wanted to see how well that works, also in terms of money, whether it's interesting to us, and it's just with these kind of things, it's kind of tough to say whether people will actually use them or not. So I think the next step after finishing Phoenix Suban is also going to be a little bit of like outreach, maybe ask people, hey, what do you think about these 3 ideas that we have on the roadmap? Which one would you pay money for? And then we decide.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. You never know with developers too, like charging for things, how it will work out. Right. Cause so many software engineers are like, everything should be open source and free.
Yeah.
But then again, I think if a tool's useful enough and you're going to be like, is your license like restrictive at all for like cross products, or does it follow?
No, you can use it in as many projects and products as you want, both commercially.
So that's amazing. Like I don't see, like I wouldn't complain about it if it's a tool that I absolutely need. One-time purchase, it's not even that expensive, and then it just speeds up your development tremendously.
Yeah, and also installing it is literally adding like a mixed dependency to it and just installing the Heeks, our Heeks repo, but there's like 3 lines of code and you're done.
Yeah, nice.
So,
yeah, that's awesome. Simplicity wins for sure.
Yeah. Well, we also have one or two more ideas really, but one of them is something that I have been sitting on for many years, and I never know whether it's a good idea or not. So maybe you can be the judge of that, Jacob. So, how much do you love to generate your own PDFs?
I hate it. I've hacked my way through and have generated PDFs before.
There you go.
I actually made this redaction app once. I was going to make a product and I just wasn't happy with how it worked. Yeah. But you could upload PDFs, and then what I did was you need alpha layers, but you don't have that in PDFs. So I like converted it to PNGs. I think it was PNGs. It was a while ago. And then I would filter and look for the keywords that you wanted redacted. And I would put a layer over with just the black line over the location of the words found. And then I would export it again as a PDF. But it was very hacked together and nasty.
Sophisticated though. Yeah. I mean, Alex and I, we have been and we are building a lot of products, and in many of them we have to generate PDFs. So we have to do that over and over again. You have to, actually Chromic PDF, the library Chromic PDF is really amazing. I used different ones back in the day. I'm not sure, like they use Puppeteer, and it was always kind of, it might work, 90% of the time, and 10% of the time it just fails and you have to retry. Chromic made it a little bit easier, but you still have to maintain Chrome driver yourself. You have to install it in your box on your server. Alex, every 2 weeks he complains to me that the CD, the deployment failed because Chrome driver updated again and nothing works anymore. So like for 4 years now, I've been thinking about just having a simple API where you send your HTML and it sends you PDF back.
That would be nice. That's useful, I feel like. Especially, there's no like direct, at least I haven't looked in a while, but there's no like easy direct way to do it with Elixir.
Well, Chromic PDF actually they might have they made it easy, but again, like you need to have Chrome driver in your container. You need to maintain that version. It's also like 140 megabytes, the Chrome driver. So like it's just unnecessary. And in my past company, we used the library, like a company called DocRaptor, and we generated our PDFs with them. But yeah, we spent like $2,000-$3,000 every month just on that, right? So my idea was kind of something similar, a little bit cheaper, maybe a little bit simpler. But then again, you just write like a little module, to call the API. You send your HTML, we send back the PDF, done.
Nice. Yeah, I like that. I mean, like anytime you build a SaaS product, you have to provide statements and everything, and people want them exportable to PDF. So
exactly, yeah.
I think that would be a great tool.
Yeah, and then
I'm guessing scaling, you would use it in house.
I would use it everywhere. I have like 3 apps where I have 3 different ways of generating PDFs in 3 different apps. I want to get rid of all of them. Just replace them with an API call. Honestly.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I love it.
Okay, well, would you pay money for that though?
Probably. Well, like if it's your same pricing structure, is it just
no? It would be like a per print
month
thing. Whatever you use, like pay to.
I see what you're saying. Like just usage fees.
Yeah. So if you have 1,000 documents that you generate, you pay X amount.
Yeah.
10
I want
cents.
to
10 cents
be
a print.
I wouldn't be against it, because that was kind of going to be my payment model for my redaction app, because you want to do all the heavy lifting on a server. But another thing I was running into too is privacy and encryption stuff. How do you prove you're handling their data like it's sensitive and all of that? So
you might need SOC 2 certification, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you open a can of worms, because I was like thinking about like attorneys, CPAs, people like that. All they're doing is redacting tons of stuff on documents, and they do it manually. But the second it leaves their computer, no one's going to pay for that service, because they can't afford to have those vulnerabilities. So some stuff to figure out.
We would not store anything, but again, like you might need to have some certification.
Yeah. Because you still are, like, it'll be in memory. It's going over an HTTP, a REST request or socket, whatever you're doing, but it's going over something.
In that case, we need like 60 grand, like startup fees, because I think that's how much like SOC 2 goes for these days.
Dang. Yeah, it is not cheap. That's for sure.
Our first customer has to dig deep, but then the second customer can get it for $50.
One rich customer, and then the rest can be cheap.
Yeah,
we need an angel investor for SOC 2 compliance.
Basically, yeah. I don't know. It's just, those are the problems that we kind of thought about solving with EZSuite, where you as a developer, you have all these issues that you need to solve over and over and over again. They're not solved well. They're always maintenance, heavy, and you would just pay somebody to fix it for them. So those are kind of the problems we have in mind for EZSuite.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great avenue to run down.
Yeah.
Difficult problems that are easy to fix with pain.
Yeah. Right. Isn't that what we all want?
Yeah, you can solve everything with pain.
Especially when the employer pays for it.
There you go. Someone did ask up in the chat if this is a paid podcast for you, Peter.
Oh, you pay me, or who pays me?
Your employer.
Who's paying me after this? We have decided.
That's funny.
Yeah. Well, I'm not getting paid unless you buy Phoenix to Ban. Then this will have been worth it.
And the link is in the description, at least on YouTube. I don't know if I always have to manually update it on Twitch afterwards for some reason.
Yeah.
Do you use Restream, Peter?
I have Restream, yeah.
Yeah. Do you have issue? Like, do your Twitch descriptions push up or no?
I don't think they ever work, to be honest.
Okay, yeah, because mine don't. It's really annoying.
Yeah.
What's Restream?
Restream allows you to so I'm using Restream on this podcast right now, and it allows me to stream to multiple platforms with just a toggle of a button. So I'm streaming on YouTube, Twitch, and X right now. And I've thought about LinkedIn, but I don't think a lot of people would watch on LinkedIn.
Not many people watch it, but like people reached out to me that I haven't spoken to in years, and they said, "Hey, I kind of, went into your live stream and I like what you were doing." So keep it
nice.
Up.
That's cool.
Like, really? Well, I think people, because also on LinkedIn, you have that red bubble when somebody goes live, like on your front page.
So it brings attention to your profile, at least.
I guess so, yeah.
Maybe I should just toggle on LinkedIn. It wouldn't be...
Yeah, it's one O off the way.
Just,
exactly.
Yeah, just super easy.
Yeah. Oh, well. How is it going with... sorry, if you have any more questions for us, otherwise I have a question for you.
No, we can just chat.
Yeah. Because how is Elixir Mentor coming along, especially the video course that you pulled from my website?
Yeah, I do feel bad that I pulled it from your website.
Nah, you shouldn't feel bad about that at all.
Elixir Mentor is good. I stopped enjoying creating content when I started charging for it, which is probably like weird to say, but it like made me procrastinate and not want to make any more content for the course. And then I got in this weird thing. I was like, I feel like I let all these people down because I like overpromised and I just like didn't want to do it anymore. And so just like the model of pushing it to YouTube and creating content when I have time even if I'm still making a lot of content, it just like makes me less stressed, I guess. Like, I don't know. It makes me happier about it.
Yeah, it becomes a job, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, isn't there a warning? It's like, don't let your hobbies become your jobs.
Yeah, like, because I really
it's no longer
enjoy,
enjoyable.
like, yeah, I enjoy making the tutorials. I enjoy helping people because I remember the learning curve when I came into Elixir, and I rewrote a lot of code over and over because I just set things up wrong. And just like being able to help people do that is awesome. And then I wanted just kind of to focus on like getting more attention on YouTube and then driving it more towards like freelance and consultancy work for, you know, making money instead of a course that like promoting and marketing a course is really hard. I mean, you know that because you've made courses, and I'm sure it's like promoting a book is hard too. It's a very difficult thing.
Well, Alex is quite successful with it, I would say, but he doesn't do it. So
Honestly, yeah, Hugo does a lot of the marketing work. Thank God.
Yeah, for who doesn't know it, Alex and Hugo, they wrote a book, Elixir Patterns. Maybe you've seen it.
It is. Well, I had Alex on and we talked. It's like one of the best books, I believe, for after you're like over the learning curve of Elixir and you're ready to like learn some nuances, you pick up Alex's book. It's good.
Yeah, I second.
Appreciate the kind words. Appreciate it. Thank you.
And what I love about it is that it just exposes you to things you never heard about.
Exactly. It makes you think about problems in a different way, which kind of like, especially if you're kind of just like you understand Elixir syntax, you kind of know what's going on. It helps you, it steers you to think more in the like functional paradigm, immutability, leveraging processes and all of that stuff. It makes you.
I would say some of the patterns there are a little controversial, I think, but like the things that I use all the time.
Yeah.
So if I use them all the time and they work, it must be good patterns.
Was a pattern for you, so.
Yeah, it was a pattern. I didn't say they were, you know, globally accepted patterns. They're mine.
Yeah. Well, but you want to learn from how people do it. Like you have products in production, so it probably it's going to help someone.
Also, the title of the book is not Good Elixir Patterns. It's just Elixir Patterns. So.
Yeah, it's up to the reader. You decide if they're good or bad.
It's Alex's Elixir Patterns.
I'll give one example. Like I have one where you bundle, like you create a DETS file and you load that up on app initialization. And like I use that in Eagle MMS for a lot of static data, where I think it's like 200, 300 megs of DETS file. And that gets bundled into the Docker container, and it's read-only data, and like it's a hot path, right? Like that gets hit in the app a lot. So I mean, could you put it in Postgres? Sure, but now you're gonna get hit with the network time on every single time you need to resolve that read-only data. And so it's a little controversial, right? You're bloating your Docker container image by like 200 megs, 300 megs. But it's also insanely fast, and
you're leveraging your server resources instead of making things slower and adding latency for someone else.
I feel like I don't know. I feel like this trend is coming back in the tech side, but like with all the microservice craze of a few years ago, everyone wanted to make their app servers as like stupid small as possible.
Monolith is coming back.
Yeah, like I don't know what the like. What was the whole point of that? Like
I don't know.
We have brand new CPUs that have like 32 cores out of the box, 64 gigs of memory. Like, just
you want to know my theory? I never jumped on the microservice bandwagon because I don't like the idea. Like if you enter AWS, you end up getting trapped in their ecosystem depending on how much integration you start using. So I never jumped on it, and I think honestly. It became popular because huge FAANG companies pushed their microservices on developers, making it sound like it's the best route to go.
Yeah, I think DHH had a really good take on this. He called it merchants of complexity. I mean, I think the cloud platforms were the merchants in this case.
Yeah, no, 100%. And so we were all swindled to think it's the best way to scale and build applications.
Yeah.
And pay a fortune doing it.
And it's funny, like tools came out of this like microservice craze, like, Ansible and Terraform and stuff like that. So you could agnostically spin up infrastructure in different cloud providers. But then all the cloud providers started making proprietary services. So it's like, all right, you write this infrastructure as code stuff once in Terraform, but it's like, all right, it only applies to AWS.
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny that all these like agnostic tools now became very like specific tools. Funny trends in tech.
Yeah.
Well, I have a whole a talk about that, like don't fight the monolith. I think I gave that in Lisbon, ElixirConf Lisbon, because for me the experience of microservices, like from a technical standpoint, as you mentioned already, it's kind of questionable whether you really need it to scale. At least, like probably you don't, at least until you have the issues that you will also come with the money to solve it or have people solve it for you. But what I liked about microservices, two company specs, actually, that it kind of helped you with the human organization of the company, because you got what's the name of the law again, where the corporation structure translates into your software. Conway's law.
I think so.
Many laws. There are too many laws. Conway's law, I believe it is. Yeah. And it basically says, well, that the organization structure will also translate into your software structure. You will see how your organization is structured based on the architecture of the software. And it can be, you can use it as your advantage, but also it can be a disadvantage. And in our case, I think it was an advantage because it really allowed us to separate from an organizational, operational standpoint, the different teams from each other.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and to make it really clear what are the protocols that they should speak in between, right? Because like if one team hands off the work for the next team, our software needed to handle that. So you could actually say, well, we need to have that data from you, right? And that also helps you with data quality issues because it makes it completely clear where you're getting the data from, who had it first, who had it last, that kind of stuff. And then, I worked with the monoliths in the last company, and all that kind of stuff just became completely vague.
Yeah, that's a good point. I never thought about it that way.
Yeah, and especially if you have in your process, like in a bigger company, right? I mean, microservices is not something for smaller companies unless you really have, high compute, like processing needs, if you do data transformation or processing, whatever. But for like big companies, it can really help you to understand the flow of the process, of your operational process, because you might have like 5 teams, 7, 10 teams working with the same data. And usually it's, like a flow from top to bottom. And if you have all of that in a single monolith, it became so hard really to understand where the borders are, the boundaries of each team, where the handoff happens. So, it's
I feel like you'd have to put
exercise.
in, being a leader of a larger team with a monolith system, you'd have to really put in the effort to delegate those lines, right? And make it clear where they exist, if you even know, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And if you use technology to force you to do it, it's also an argument you can give to management. Like, we got to have this talk about, our data protocol, the data we transform, like the events, we need to discuss the events because we need to handle them on the software side. Well, we just need to sit down and discuss this because otherwise nobody will make that a priority,
Yeah.
And I mean, I had that issue where like downstream teams, they had to clean up the data quality issues of the upstream teams, and it just becomes a political mess and a blame game eventually. So,
well, I mean, if you have bad quality data leaving your service, it's definitely your fault.
Yeah. At least it's easier to pinpoint it, right? Because then you also on the downstream service, you can do an anti-corruption layer, an ACL layer, where you say, well, you want to send me data, fine, but I'm not going to accept it unless it, comes like it has these requirements, it fulfills these requirements, that kind of stuff. And stuff like when somebody signed up to the company, to the website, and you ask for like name and email, but then later you also need to know which company that person works for. And in like 50% of the cases, that field is not filled in because it's not, like initially it's not mandatory, but then in the process of onboarding a user, it should be filled in. And then the team just doesn't do it, but all the other teams downstream, they rely on that data, right? And then like after the first service, you could say, well, I'm not going to accept this unless that field is filled in. And then it's the upstream team's problem to fill that field, right? So it's their problem. They got to solve it. So again, this is a long rant about microservices. I'm just saying software and technology in general, not necessarily microservices. You can also solve it differently, but you can use it as your advantage in these kind of organizational problems.
It's good to have a pro opinion of it, because otherwise Alex and I would have just sat here and bashed them, I think.
Yeah.
Positive is good.
Everything is trade-offs.
Yeah, for sure. I think that it's always that question too of technology stacks before you start a project. You have to make sure you're picking the tools that fit your product, right?
And that tool is always Elixir Online.
It's always Elixir.
Let's be honest here.
Yeah.
But at least with front end stuff, that it changes drastically, right? I think Elixir is a good overall back end solution, right? Just because
I think it's one of my favorite. And I did a lot of Java at Amazon, hated that. Did a lot of PHP after that, wasn't a huge fan. A lot of Node after that, wasn't a fan. A lot of Python, wasn't a fan. And a lot of it came down to the runtime. It's not necessarily the language layer, where this is the stuff that Sasha Ullrich touches on the spirit of the spirit of Erlang. I think is that's the talk to watch from Sasha Ullrich.
The soul of Erlang.
Soul of Erlang. There you go. And what you get out of the runtime, the Beam, is just it's really difficult to replicate that anywhere else. And so Elixir and Erlang and Gleam are really good ways to expose those very unique runtime characteristics. So yeah, for backends, I think something on the Beam is probably one of your best bets, because there's just problems you run into on the other ones that you can't work around them. Perfect example, I was at a healthcare company, and they had a Node backend, and they're running a whole bunch of Node instances behind PM2, which is essentially you spin up a bunch of Node processes, and you can load balance between all those instances. And they were doing CPU bound work, and every once in a while it would round robin and would hit an instance that previously got a document that was too big to parse through until the next time it round robined, and then documents were getting lost and dropped. There's no good way around it, really. So these are the issues that you run into that in Elixir we don't have to think about it. It's like, all right, you have the scheduler just give every process its time slice fairly, and it's a non-issue. You don't even need to think about that. From an architect standpoint, doesn't even have to enter your mind as a problem.
I know, it's kind of nice. Yeah, I don't miss. I before I started writing Elixir, I was Node.js and wrote lots of nasty REST APIs, and I don't miss that world.
Yeah. Actually, about this topic, especially among seniors, we always love to point to the Gen service and the OTP and what Alex just mentioned as well. And if I'm honest, I love that I have these tools at my disposal. I don't think though that they are the most important thing about Elixir and Erlang. For me at least. If they weren't there, yes, I would miss them, and I would need to fix the issues, like Alex said, in other ways. But I think the core offering for me is the functional programming in Elixir and Erlang. It's the FP, because also what Alex and I work on, my SaaS, Jacob, also what you probably work on, these projects are usually not highly technically complex. Well, I'm not talking for you, Jacob. Sorry, I don't know what you work on. Maybe you work on something really super complex.
I think when you break down anything, you're not doing anything hugely complex anytime. Unless you're doing crazy machine learning algorithms.
But even then you break it down, right?
I watch Chris Granger's talks. So I'm that's
okay.
That's pretty complex.
Yes, he has the right to talk in that way, right? 100%. But okay, so I'm going to talk from personal experience then, because I can't go wrong there.
But if you're just building SaaS products and things, and you're not probably doing anything crazy.
No, right? You have a button on the website, it does a thing, and you do a thing, and it's kind of it's RESTful, so whatever, you just do something, you persist in the database, and that's it. So I would say what helps me in my day-to-day daily work and day to day, it's like 99% of it is the functional aspect of the language. And for me, every time I go to an OOP language like Rust or JavaScript, well, JavaScript's not necessarily OOP, but still, like every time I go to a language that is not 100% functional, I end up writing functional code again. You know, I wrote some JavaScript. Every single function I have is a static public function. I don't want to have any state anywhere. Everything is function calls, right? And that is something that, for me, it just works because that's how I think about the process. That's how we even document use cases and requirements, you know?
So,
I
agree.
And the code, and then the code just like 100% mirrors how you were thinking, right?
Yeah.
So no gotchas.
Well, like I struggled when I first started learning how to program object-oriented programming. Like I couldn't figure it out. Like it took a long time for it just to click. If I started with a functional language, I think I would have like grasped the concept of programming so much faster, because I think a function does one thing, right? A transformation. And then your next function, it forces you to write cleaner code because you're writing simpler functions instead of these magic functions that you accidentally start doing in object-oriented languages. And then you have weird race conditions and you're altering state in multiple places and you get really nasty bugs in your code base.
I was gonna say the pass by reference versus pass by value is one of the biggest gotchas for new people.
Yeah.
And like to Peter's point and your point, like functional programming, like everything's just passed by value, right? Like if I pass a map to a function, I either return a new map and set it in my original call site, or like whatever happens there is totally isolated and I don't have to worry about it at all.
Yeah,
I've seen like way too many people like pass an array around, which is pass by reference in JavaScript. They do some sort of mutation. What they really want to do is just perform some computation on that array. And the original call site now has that mutated data. And as like a new program, you're like, what the hell's happening here?
It's confusing. Yeah. Because I think naturally our brains work in an immutable fashion, right?
Yeah. It makes a lot more sense. Like I pass the data there, and then when I continue running here, like the world has not changed. Everything should be as it was.
Yeah. Well, it's procedural. Like that's how we think, right? We think in procedures. Like I do step 1, then I do step 2 with the result from step 1. So we think in these ways, but then in OOP it doesn't translate to the code. And even if you think about it, like if you update a variable on an object, you're like, oh, now I assign the value to that object, right? Okay, and then in the next step, I'm using the value to do something else. Like, there's always a step in between that doesn't quite work with how we think about it. So
I agree.
Yeah, and that's my point. Like, OTP, Erlang, all these things are amazing and great, and what we can do with it is amazing. But if I'm honest, like in 99% of my cases, what I cherish every single day is the functional nature. And that's not unique to Elixir or Erlang, right? I mean, there are other functional languages out there. I haven't written F# or Lisp or something like that, with Haskell, right? That's the biggest probably. I haven't written any of these, but from what I understand is that Elixir with the Ruby syntax kind of ish just got it has the best version of it, so to say. Like, nailed it.
I think
just nailed it.
One of the most approachable ones.
Yeah. And I think that's why everybody who works with Elixir, they love Elixir. Because, how often do you spin up gen servers, right? How often do you do distributed data processing?
Every day.
Of course, Alex. I know what you were doing. That's
That's a lie.
It's a lie.
I agree with you that the functional programming is the most important. But then like OTP gen servers are really nice to have when you need them.
100%.
But I also didn't learn anything. Like I didn't touch a gen server or any fancy processes or anything for like 3 years when I first started learning Elixir.
I think that's one of the beauties of the Elixir ecosystem, where like things like Oben, Phoenix, like all these amazing tools that I use are built on these abstractions, but they're not leaky abstractions. Like I don't need to worry about any of this stuff. Like if I'm writing, back in the day, if I was writing a Phoenix controller, I didn't need to worry about state or anything, or processes or OTP or anything. I got that handler invoked. Under the hood, Phoenix was smart enough to spin up new processes to handle all these things and load balance. And I was just the beneficiary of these amazing like tools. And I operated at the top of the pyramid, but underneath that pyramid was a whole bunch of OTP magic.
Yeah, for sure.
I was grateful existed.
Owen Bickford just goes, Gen server life. I agree. I love my Gen servers when I use them. They're fun.
Yeah, it is always exciting. You're like, oh, I get to write a Gen server today.
I have an excuse to write a Gen server.
Yeah. True.
I'm just going to use it for holding state across my whole application. No.
I was about to say that like 95% of the time when I write a Gen server, it's just to work as a singleton, to hold some state, and to do some stuff periodically. 95% of my Gen servers.
Peter, you're not supposed to tell people that. No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're supposed to gatekeep that kind of knowledge.
Oh, I see. No, of course, I rebuild Broadway like 2 times a day. That's what I do in my day job.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I know. But I think in the discussion about, Elixir, and we all love it and how great it is, these kind of things, they kind of fall through the cracks a little. Like people point very quickly to these very highly technical aspects of it. And I agree, like they are amazing, right? If you have that problem, it's solved for you. You don't have to worry about it, right? Like OTP solves it for you. But again, like what do we do 95% of the time every day? We do certain repetitive tasks, like whatever. If we write web apps, it's mostly a click that leads to an action that needs to update the database.
Yeah.
And to get that done, like to get that, like how easy it makes it. That I think is also something that we should maybe highlight just more. Like
Owen said 99% of his Gen servers are live views.
Yeah, there you go. And then you don't even use the Gen server behavior, you just use live view.
Yep. Yeah. Easiest way to use one.
True. Because just, to finish my point here, my thought is, if you look at Ruby and Rails, right? I mean, why did it become so popular? Because it's so amazingly productive. And people with little code, they can actually do a lot of stuff. And it's really popular for web apps. It's not so popular with, backend data processing heavy tasks because of the single threadedness of everything. But people don't really like they always say, well, you can just scale horizontally. So for them, it's not that important, right? I mean, and because apparently they don't do that many data heavy processing tasks every day. They write web apps.
Right.
So that is an aspect where like Elixir has that, but also, can do the data heavy processing in the backend if you need to. So
yeah, exactly.
But still, like the first part, I think sometimes we forget to mention that, to highlight it enough.
Well, it's the shiny feature that draws people to Elixir, and that's all they care about and want to do. And I think it's one of those things like you can jump into those shiny features too quickly before you actually understand like the life cycle and like just architecture of an Elixir app. I think it's much more important to figure that out and get that down before you start jumping into all the OTP stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Like when I demo, well, I don't demo Elixir that often, but every now and then I do. And what I usually do is like a multiplayer game where you just connect your live view, you click a box, and that generates a pub/sub event that you send to the other player, and their live view updates. And they can also click a box, like tic-tac-toe or whatever. And just clicking like that already shows you the strength of live view, but also pops up in Elixir, like the language, how it looks like. And within 5 minutes, you have a distributed multiplayer game running without any JavaScript, and it just works.
I just built I've been building it for a while, but it's finally kind of about to be in production. But I built my first like very simple like multiplayer game server, which is really cool. And it interacts with like a JavaScript game engine. Like it's super basic. It's like a Peggle style game, but all the scoring and stuff. So every peg that gets hits a socket, and then like at the end of the game time. So everyone's game time is synced, and then all their scores are shown at the end. It was fun. Like it gave me a good reason to play around with a bunch of gen servers, because I create like a game gen server for like, game wide things like game time countdown, like when it's starting, and then it collects all the users' information. And then every player that joins gets their own gen server to keep track of their state. And so it was a fun project. Like It's nothing fancy. Like it's probably the most basic game server you could ever build, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, still. Yeah, I remember doing that for the Game of Life. Like I rebuilt that with one cell being one gen server.
Okay.
Yeah, wait, like 3-4 years ago, I wrote a blog post about it, obviously. That was fun to do because then you have like 1 million gen servers.
You're really flexing the gen server thing.
I did. I just said, because once you have the basics down, you just, up the number to 1 million and you see what happens. And it worked.
It's amazing, huh?
It is. And all the gen servers talked through events. So like, message passing, and it just worked. It was really cool. And that also showed me how difficult it is to write a good game server, that can handle all these states, so to say, of the game. Yeah.
That's cool. I like that. Your supervision tree probably looked crazy.
I haven't even looked at it. But yeah, probably like 1 million nodes.
Right. Yeah.
But 10,000, I think with 10,000 nodes I did. Yeah.
Okay. That's cool. But yeah, it's fun. It's but like in most projects, you're not doing that much with a gen server. Like I think in like my boring projects, like Elixir Mentor, my website, I have my events page that hits Discord's API, grabs the events I create in Discord, puts the data on my website. And I didn't want just, my traffic hitting a third-party API. So yeah, like once an hour, I have a gen server hit the API and then just keeps the data in state. But that's like probably the most simple, basic solution to use a gen server.
That's 95%.
So that gets back to the one of two patterns that you frequently use gen servers
Exactly.
for.
Yeah. But it's cool. I always love my excuse to build a gen server.
Yeah.
All right, cool. I think we should wrap this up. I kind of have a hard cutoff. I have a call in like 10 minutes, but this was awesome. And you guys are the first multi guests, and I think it went pretty well.
Nice. We beta tested.
Yeah. I did not know how it was going to go because I've been having issues with OBS, and I just figured it out like 10 minutes before our call what was causing it. And it was like I had on my microphone, I had monitor and output selected.
Oh, you hurt yourself.
And whatever, it was like lagging everything. And
oh, really?
It just made it like unusable. And that I don't even know how it got flagged because it randomly happened and I couldn't solve the problem. So I finally solved it. But what was weird is changing scenes in OBS is what triggered it. If I stayed on this scene, it didn't matter.
Okay.
So I have no idea. I'm not smart enough. I just barely I hack my way through OBS.
Yeah, OBS is one of these softwares that really trick you into believing it's a simple software.
Yeah,
but
it's not. Once
you start using it, you're like, no, it's not simple at all. And there are all these small little tricks and configs and all that kind of stuff that you need to find. I didn't know, but sorry for going there, but in my stream, I when I screen share, the text would not be sharp; it would be pixelated. And I was like, well, how can I fix this? So I tried around, and eventually, I realized if you want to have 100% accuracy, you need to have the same window size of your screen as you're streaming in OBS. So you need to have, the same dimensions, like 16:9, ideally, and then you just scale your screen to have exactly the same pixels as your OBS out. But even if you drag something in OBS and make it slightly smaller, you already it's kind of down sampling it or something. Yeah. But if you downsample it or resample, there are algorithms to try to make it sharp again. And you can enable them by right-clicking it and saying, use this algorithm. By default, it's not on. But if you turn it on, out of a sudden, magically, it becomes pretty sharp again. And that took me like 3-4 hours to figure out.
It's
just
so annoying.
right-click, select this.
I remember you telling me that because I was like, I might have to copy your layout because I love how you have like the chat down the side. And then you were telling me that. You're like, oh, a little fun note you should know.
Yeah, wasted 4 hours of my life.
I've probably wasted more time on OBS as well, but when it works, it's great.
True.
This is why I don't stream.
You're streaming right now.
Yes, you get streamed.
Awesome, guys. Well, thank you so much. And for everyone that tuned in, I hope you have a good weekend. And thanks for joining. And we had a very busy chat. I love when people are very involved. So it makes it a lot more fun. But thanks so much, guys. And I'm sure we'll do this again.
We will. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And thanks for the chat.
See you guys.
Testing.